Good evening, change makers and social innovators all around the globe. We welcome you to another amazing edition of the IHA Social Impact webinar. Kindly share with us where you are joining us from around the world. We would love to read from you. We're super excited about this edition because we have in the studio a powerhouse in the networking game, and as well as a powerhouse in the social development space. And we're super excited because she has so much wealth of experience, and she will be sharing with us in few minutes. So our amazing audience would love to read from you. Share in the comment section where you are joining us from. We are excitedly looking forward to reading from each of you. And our guest mentor is with us in the studio, and she's also excitedly, waiting for the opportunity to share, the depths of wisdom from the inside of her. All right. So share in the comment section where you're joining us from. We'd love to read from you. All right. So ahead of that, I would move on to introduce our guest mentor, and I want us to know some more about her. So we'll be sharing some insights about her background. Achenyo Idachaba-Obaro is a computer scientist turned social entrepreneur. She is the founder of MitiMeth, an award-winning social enterprise transforming waste and building livelihoods through the transformation of invasive aquatic weeds and agricultural residues. To date, MitiMeth has trained over 600 women from communities across Nigeria and Ghana to make eco-friendly home decor and lifestyle products from these natural fibers. She's passionately about creating sustainable textiles and decorative home accessories from renewable materials and working with designers and organizations to push these into the mainstream. She's one of Y Niger and LLA's 2017 100 Most Inspiring Women in Nigeria, a 2017 Vital Voices VV Lead Fellow, a 2015 Emerging Female Entrepreneur of the Year by the Creative Entrepreneurs Association of Nigeria, CEAN, a 2015 Tony Elumelu Foundation Fellow, a 2014 Carter Women's Initiative Fellow and Laureate for Sub-Saharan Africa, and a 2013 UN Women Awardee. She has been featured on BBC, Dashwell TV, CNBC Africa, and CNN's African Startup. Our TED Talk has 1.8 million views, and her work has been featured in several publications, including a 2018 UN Environment Program publication on exploring the potential for adopting alternative materials to reduce marine plastic litter. Prior to founding MitiMeth, Achenyo spent 11 years with ExxonMobil, where she held a variety of regional and global positions. She has a BSc in computer science and economics from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, an MSc in applied computer science from Illinois State University, and an MBA from Cornell University. She holds the position of associate lecturer at the University of Ibadan, Center for General Studies for the 2020-2021 session, and course director for Leap Africa's 2021-2022 Social Innovators Program Workshop. Now she will be joining us and taking us on a ride, and we'll be sharing on the topic creating and nurturing strategic partnerships in social ventures, networking basics, sector to sector collaborations. We warmly welcome you, Mar, in the studio, and we're super excited to have you with us.
I'm ready when you are.
Yes.
All right, great. Good evening, everyone, and it's good to be back. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
What
yes,
is this
yes,
better?
I can.
All right, fantastic. So good evening, everyone. Our wonderful change makers out there. It is a delight to be back. And I'm hoping that today's session or tonight's session would go seamlessly compared to about a week or two ago. So thank you very much for coming back. And we look forward to talking, having a conversation related to, how we can build collaboration capital within the social sector. So with that, Toyin, if you can just advance the slides.
All right,
that would be great. All right. So if we look at the title of our the talk or the class tonight is on creating and nurturing strategic partnerships in social ventures. We'll talk about networking basics and sector-to-sector collaborations. Now, the very first slide, content related, that we have here has to do with the SDGs. So all of us that are social entrepreneurs or social innovators are very familiar with the SDGs, or we should be familiar with the SDGs. Because I expect that if you're a social entrepreneur that's online, that your venture or your idea, if it's still in ideation stage, is tackling one or more of the SDGs. And what I would like to highlight is that even if you have, quote unquote, one SDG, there's one other SDG which should be, part and parcel of, the SDGs that you have or you're achieving within your organization. And that's SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. The truth of the matter is you have to have partnerships in order for you to achieve the objectives of your social venture or your social enterprise. And then you also need to have partnerships developed or created or established in order for you to actually attain the achievement of, one or more of the sustainable development goals. So in essence, what I'm saying here is that number 17 has to be an integral part of your SDG portfolio as a social venture. So let's just keep that in mind. Everybody at the end of this master class should add 17. If 17 isn't within your portfolio, you need to add number 17 to that portfolio. And hopefully, by the time we get through this class, it will become very apparent as to why number 17 is very critical and a crucial part of your success. All right, so we'll move on to the second slide, which essentially just highlights some of the partnerships that MitiMeth has been able to establish over the years. So we're 10 years into the organization, although, the ideation and, just fleshing out the details of this social enterprise occurred about a year or two prior. We are 10 years on ground in terms of actual execution of, our aims and objectives of the social enterprise. So what I do want to highlight with this slide is that, they say it takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes a host of partners for you to be able to achieve your objectives and for you to also travel far, like they say. If you want to go fast, you travel alone. If you want to travel far, you go with people, or you travel with people, or you journey with people. And that's essentially what this slide is communicating. There's several partners that we have had over the years and, have taken on different forms and belong to different spheres or different sectors. So if you look on here, you'll see that we have media listed. Media has been very, very helpful in amplifying what we do at MitiMeth. And I think the same thing would also apply to, your respective social ventures. You need someone to help you tell your story. But first and foremost, you need to have a story to tell in the first place. And if you do have a story to tell, you can be rest assured that, the media would be interested in carrying your story. One thing that I would also highlight is that all of the media that are reflected here, be it TV or be it print media, we have not paid a dime for the publicity that we have received. I mean, we feel very fortunate, very blessed, and we're extremely grateful for the media houses that have reached out to us to cover what we do, and it has been free of charge, so free publicity. And the one thing that I want to highlight is that, as you network and you meet, different people from the press, make sure you're responsive in terms of if they ask you for information related to your organization, make sure you're not putting them on hold or deferring them to later, because news is hot. So if they're coming out to you and reaching out to you, please respond quickly. We also have academic institutions that we've partnered with. And I'd like to share, what happened when I first started, or when I was, building the organization from ground zero. I worked into the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the University of Ibadan. And I, indicated that, I'd like to collaborate. I'd like to partner with the organization. And of course, I had to be bringing something to the table in terms of, what the organization was about. So it wasn't just I was coming out there, I wanted them to partner without having something to offer, and for them to see the benefit of their, having this partnership established. So I brought something to the table. It was still in its infancy, but I did highlight the importance of what I was doing and why it was important to partner with the university, with this center at the university. And that's because I wanted to have access to academic resources in order, to build technical capacity within my venture. And, the worst answer anybody can give you for asking is no. And in this particular instance, the answer was yes. But if I hadn't asked, I won't have had the benefit of receiving a yes for an answer. So that's just one example of, stepping out there and, taking a risk in order to further one's aims and objectives. And it is through, partnering with the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation that I've been able to expand my network within the university community, because one thing leads to another. People hear about what you're doing, and then next thing, other people are reaching, other academics or centers on campus are reaching out to see if, you can work together. And that essentially has been our story with this particular partnership. So that's just one example out of the several that are listed here. There's a story behind each partner that is represented here. And I think the same thing would also apply to you as well, as you build your partners, as you build that network of partners. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. All right, so, I just want to highlight some of the effective networker competencies. You have to be opportunity seeking and willing to take initiative. I just gave the example of, how I became partners with the University of Ibadan Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I, was willing to take the initiative of stepping forward to say, hey, I think it would be great if we work together. And of course, the response was positive. You have to be very passionate and persistent. You are the owner of the idea. You know exactly why you're into, your particular social venture. And if you weren't passionate about it, it will become very obvious. So you have to be very passionate and persistent, because people read that. And I'll give an example that happened earlier on this week. I had someone reach out to me, and this was via LinkedIn, and we'll talk about different platforms whereby you can network. And the gentleman reached out to me and said, oh, he'd really like to talk about impact, our community impact. And we scheduled the appointment, and it was quite an interesting conversation that took place. So during the course of the conversation, he made the comment, a number of times that, first and foremost, he was impressed with what we're doing. And then secondly, he said your passion about what you do and what you're doing and what you have done comes through. So people should be able to read that, yes, you're very passionate about what you're doing, and you're excited about it as well. Because if you're not excited about it, you can be rest assured nobody is going to be excited about it. People can only be excited as much as you are excited about what you're doing. You have to be a risk taker. And sort of develop somewhat of a thick skin, because you would receive many yeses along the journey, but you also receive many no's along the journey as you journey into networking or building your network. So you have to take a risk of stepping forward and stepping out. For those who are introverts, it would involve stepping out of your comfort zone. And I know that's not necessarily an easy thing for somebody who's not that quote unquote sociable. You also have to have the power of persuasion and influence. Why are you into what you're doing, and why should, this particular relationship be entered into, and of what benefit would it be to the other party and to yourself as well? And you have to have that power of persuasion and being able to influence others to buy into your idea, as well as influence those that you want to get things from. And then you also need to be very independent and self-confident. If you exude that self-confidence, not cockiness or arrogance, that certainly is not being self-confident, but confident about what you're doing, confident about your venture, confident about the impact you're making within the communities, confident about the potential as well of what you're doing. And then you also have to be very independent as well. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so if we're to define networking, or to understand what networking is all about, it's an ongoing business strategy. You don't do it once and then it ends. It is continuous. And I believe that as you network, and you network effectively, you get better at it as well. And it's essentially the connecting of a person or people to offer something to the other party, or the connecting of a person or people to receive something from the other party. Essentially, it's a two-way street. All right. So you're connecting to receive, you're connecting to give. In certain instances, it might not necessarily, in fact, be all about you. So it might be you connecting, the other party with someone else that might be able to help them or be of benefit to them. So when you go into networking, please do not think that it is all about you and what you can get. Sometimes it might be all about perhaps, what your peer or a fellow social entrepreneur that you're familiar with could benefit from with this other party. And I'll just cite some of the examples. So for me, when I meet people, and we introduce ourselves, first and foremost, you talk about what you do. I'm not just thinking about myself. If there's something the other party has said that sort of resonates with, something that another person or colleague is doing, I am sure to, bring that out during the course of the conversation, so that there can also be sort of like a point of connection, so to speak, whereby even if you don't have that thing to offer, you know that somebody else has that to offer, and you can say, oh, by the way, what you're doing sounds so interesting, and I know somebody in this particular field that I'm sure would love to meet with you or would love to connect with you, and then you can foster that connection moving forward. But bottom line, it's all about giving and taking in whichever form you want to look at it, either for you or for somebody else. All right, so why do it? And I've sort of covered part of that in the previous slide. We do it to get or present information that makes life better for others. We also do it to be in the know, to be current, to know what's going on within our particular sector or what's going on in the environment. We just want to be current, know exactly, what the current affairs are pertaining to our immediate environment, and even beyond our immediate environment as well. And then we also do it to connect with, funders. And I know that, as a social enterprise or a social entrepreneur, you're probably looking for people that would fund your enterprise, either, at that seed stage or perhaps during that growth phase when you're looking to scale. But networking provides you with the opportunity to do that. And to also find business partners. We network to find business partners, people that we can collaborate with, and in fact, to find potential staff for organizations as well. So networking is very vast and very expansive. So it really depends on what you're looking for. There's always a network to build for your particular need. All right, so how do we do it? And that's the next slide. Toyin, if you can advance. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking at networking is sometimes it happens, as a matter of coincidence. It happens, you just happen to be in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people. But in most cases, you have to be very deliberate and intentional about it. So you need to first and foremost establish your networking objectives. Why do I want to network in the first place? What am I hoping to get out of this? And what am I hoping to give in this networking that I'm planning to do? And then secondly, you research your networking events. Where best should I, do this networking? Is it at a social function? Is it at a more formal event, formal function? Either a launch, like for example, yesterday I was at the Circular Business Platform Lagos launch. That provided an opportunity for networking with people who are within the circular economy, or at least have an interest in ensuring that the circular economy becomes mainstreamed. So there were different people at that particular event, and it certainly provided an opportunity to network with the different stakeholders. So make sure you research your networking events and ensure that the event that you're looking to attend would help you achieve the networking objectives that you have established. And then, this sounds very mundane, but set achievable people to meet targets. So if you're going to network, it's not, you're not doing this randomly for the sake of doing it. And again, bullet number 1, lends itself to that point. So when you network, you also want to ensure that you're networking with a purpose, and you're meeting the right people, you're connecting with the right people at that networking event. For those who are extroverted in nature, perhaps, meeting with people is like, a very easy, effortless activity. But for some other people, that is not the case. So for those people that is not the case, set an achievable target. If it's 3 people that you want to meet at that event, make sure you set that target number and make sure you make it happen. And make sure that you're not meeting people that you already know that aren't going to help you achieve your objectives, but you're meeting new people. So you can even put this as set achievable new people to meet targets, and then you step out of your comfort zone and ensure that you're mingling within that particular networking event to make that happen. One of the things that I also do, believe it or not, I am not an extrovert. I am an introvert. And one of the things that I do, since meeting with people is not necessarily one of those activities that excites me all the time, is if I go to a networking event or I happen to be at a presentation at a launch, I make sure I pay very close attention to the presentations that are given, such that when the Q&A session arises or comes up, we're given the opportunity for that, I ask questions, and we need to make sure that the questions we ask at these events relate to the topic, and they are you're not rambling. So you're asking pointed questions at perhaps the panelist or the keynote speaker, whoever it is that has given that presentation. And inevitably, if you ask a question, the person that you've posed the question to would remember you. And in fact, that even makes it easier for you to approach that person at the end of the event, to either thank them for the response they gave you, or for you to build on the question that you asked earlier. So that's one of the techniques that I typically use, because I feel that by doing that, it sort of has broken the ice, and I'm able to approach that person much more easily. And then you need to also hone your elevator pitch, which essentially is, know what you're doing and be able to communicate that in a very concise manner. You'll probably need to rehearse it over and over and over and over again. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And of what benefit is this to either the environment or to society at large? And then another way to network effectively is to leverage professional organizations. I, earlier on, and I still am, a member of WIMBIZ, which is Women in Management, Business, and Public Policy. And by joining that organization, my network certainly has expanded quite rapidly. And by connecting with people in the organization, they have also essentially helped my network to expand by introducing me to other people, and then by also providing me with opportunities. So if an event comes up, people say, oh, I think she'll be a good fit for this particular event. Maybe we should ask her to come and present, or what have you. So that's one way in which I've expanded my visibility as well as my network. So leverage your professional organizations. Make sure you're not just, quote unquote, a member of the organization as well. Or if you're going to be a member of the organization, make sure that you're a visible member of that professional organization, because there'll be lots of opportunities for you to network, either through internal events that have been organized or external events that they have privy to. So these are just some of the ways in which you can do networking effectively. All right, where to do it? Formal or informal places. As a social entrepreneur, we're talking about, how you can build collaborative capital here. I don't know how many people are, familiar with ANDI, which is Association of Network of Development Entrepreneurs. I think that's what it stands for. So that's, I'll give you an example later on of how, just joining that organization, not joining the organization, but participating in events organized by that organization have been of great benefit. And in fact, before I even move on, maybe I'll just go ahead and share. So I had the opportunity, this was several years ago, I think it was in 2015 or thereabout. I had joined this Alliance for Artisan Enterprise because I wanted to expand my market. I wanted to build market linkages. And I figured, okay, the best way to be able to build market linkages beyond the shores of Nigeria would be to join an organization that has access or can provide, market access linkages. So I did my research and I found, Alliance for Artisan Enterprise. And it's a membership-based alliance. And I went ahead and joined it because there was no representation from Africa, at least from Nigeria. That much I do know. And I was like, I really need to network and understand how all these other artisan enterprises are, building their market share, growing their impact by, venturing into other markets. So I joined that alliance. And I'll get newsletters and I would, read some I won't read, but I'll at least, skim through at a minimum. And it was reading one of those that I realized, there was going to be this particular event, like a meeting that was going to take place in Washington, D.C. So I wrote a letter and said, I really would be interested in attending this event. And I can't remember the details of it, but I just thought, okay, it'll be of great benefit. I am this enterprise in Nigeria. These are some of the challenges that I'm facing in terms of, building my enterprise and expanding my markets. And we started a conversation. So they were engaged based on the email that I sent. Well, fast forward, or Reader's Digest version, they offered to pay for my trip to Washington, D.C. to attend this meeting. So I attended the meeting, and one of the things that they wanted me to do, one of the requirements for attending the meeting was to provide, I think I was supposed to participate in beta testing for a program that they were developing for artisans. So they wanted me to test run it, which I did, and then provide feedback. Which I thought no problem at all. So that was one way in which I built my network in Washington, D.C. with some of the stakeholders. Well, fast forward, while I was at that meeting, and just in talking with individuals there, one person said, it'll be interesting. Are you familiar with Andy? And I said, no, I'm not familiar with Andy. And the lady said, I'll introduce you to somebody in Andy. We do have an Andy West Africa chapter. So we'll see how we can connect you to the West African chapter. So I had the meeting. They ended up connecting me with the West African chapter and the gentleman running it in Nigeria. So I was now in the repository. Well, that now provided additional opportunities for attending events locally here in Nigeria. So I attended an event, and at I think the very first event that I attended, there was somebody from SCOL. And I'm sure a number of you on the call are familiar with SCOL Forum, which is held in Oxford every year. Of course, COVID threw a number, so it hasn't held in Oxford over the past 2 years. But SCOL is like this mover and shaker event, and it is strictly by invitation. And I'd always wanted to attend SCOL. So meeting the people from SCOL at this event, I thought was just an exciting opportunity. So I connected with them and kept in touch and had indicated that I wanted to attend SCOL. And of course, they made it very clear that it was very difficult, but I should fill in the application. Well, I did that year and I did get in. But fast forward, I attended another event, which was, I think it was it Leap Africa? I think it was Leap Africa. Anyway, I attended another event where I now ran into the SCOL folks again. And one thing led to another. I now connected the SCOL folks with another group of folks that I had met through another network. And needless to say, next thing I knew, I was getting an invitation to attend SCOL. So here, I gave the example of how it's not necessarily all about you, that it could be, helping to connect this party you've met with another party because you believe that that would be a mutually beneficial relationship. So needless to say, I got this invitation to school, and unfortunately, and I was really looking forward to it, but unfortunately it didn't happen because of COVID. But again, it's just to illustrate that, one connection leads to another connection, which leads to another connection, which ultimately would help you achieve your objectives at the end of the day. So I ended up attending school, not in person, but virtually in 2020, I believe it was. Yes, 2020. That was, yes, 2020. All right. Other places are meetings, and I'm sure all of you can attest to the fact that you have met people at meetings and established relationships as a result of your connecting at the meeting or at a meetup event. Another place is, incubators, accelerators, and fellowship programs. Here you are in this accelerator. This is an opportunity for you to network with one another and see how you can build relationships of common interest, relationships that are complementary, that will help you to, grow your impact within your space. Another place is exhibitions. I have met some very interesting people at exhibitions. In fact, some of the connections that I made at exhibitions actually, helped us to expand our training. Our training programs, or reaching out to other communities. It was actually through exhibitions in some instances. So exhibitions are a good place to network because people actually come up to your booth if you have a booth and they want to learn more about what you're doing. So that gives you the opportunity to share what you're doing and also to learn about the person that's visiting your booth. If they've taken the time to stop by your booth, it's because they believe that you have something of interest to them and vice versa. I've already talked about professional organizations and then religious institutions as well. So depending on what faith you are, you could connect and network with people, of the same faith and within your religious body. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so networking has taken on a new dimension in this COVID-19 era. We're doing more of virtual events more than physical events, although, we seem to be, gradually moving back to those face-to-face meetings. But having said that, I think COVID has also taught us that we can do things a bit differently, leveraging technology, and networking is no different. We need to leverage, our digital tools to network effectively. I've mentioned LinkedIn here, and I expect that everyone that is on this call is on LinkedIn, and we know LinkedIn is even taking on a new dimension now in terms of the kind of things that they offer, the functionality that they offer, and they also have a little bit of a social twist to it now, albeit in a professional manner. But leverage those LinkedIn connections. I just talked about a gentleman that reached out to me, that I had a meeting with earlier on this week. It was one of those, I want to be in your network. And I said, okay, sure. And the next thing, I got an email, and he didn't really say much in the email apart from, he wanted to discuss my impact in the community. And then I checked his profile, and I thought, well, I'm not quite sure how his profile actually ties with what I am doing, because it seemed as if from his profile, it was more of branding and marketing. So I thought, okay, is he trying to market his services to me? So to be honest, I wasn't that responsive based on what I saw in his profile. But I still sent him my email address and said, okay, here's my email. I check this more often. Reach out to me. So we sort of said, okay, we'll schedule a meeting, but that meeting never happened because I didn't respond to him and tell him what date. So he followed up, and then I felt really bad, and I said, okay, we'll meet this Monday. So we met on Monday, and I tell you, his profile his profile was only one side of him and side of what he did. So apparently he was an angel investor. And then not only that, he was also responsible. I guess they have these consortiums where they put together challenges for social innovators. So I thought to myself, my goodness, if I hadn't, responded to his email, albeit it was late, and I won't have been able to understand that his LinkedIn profile was just one small part of what he was projecting. So he had done private equity, et cetera, et cetera. But we had this very interesting conversation where it was more of he was interested in hearing about our story. Which brings me to another point here in regards to this connection. How did he find out about what we were doing? He wasn't even looking for MitiMeth. He said he typed in, I guess he was doing some Google research, and his interest is more on water. So he typed in water community Nigeria, and somehow we showed up. So, SEO, this search engine optimization, very, very important. So for those of you that have websites, for those of you that have, your LinkedIn profiles, your social media, just make sure that, you have these keywords highlighted such that if anybody is looking for something that's remotely close to what you're involved in, they'll be able to find you. So it was those three things that he typed in, and my profile came up, and then he decided, okay, let him find out more about our organization. And it was through that he was like, oh, he needs to talk to us. He needed to talk to me. And, like I said, we had this meeting on Monday. At the end of the conversation, it was more like it was give and take. So he got all this information about what we were doing. And then I also learned about him. He was like, oh, he had done private equity, but now, he was more socially minded versus where he was before. So I asked him, I said, you know what? Private equity, I'm interested in learning more about that. I hear about all these, people, when you're going into your funding rounds, your Series A, your this series, that series, I want to be educated more and understand how the mind of an investor works. And he was all very happy. He's happy to share with me how this whole thing works. And this is not, when I'm pitching, I'm able to have this in a very relaxed atmosphere and learn in the process. So that was one of those LinkedIn connections that, was not quite obvious at first, but after having this conversation and connecting, I could see that, my goodness, this was a good person to be linked with or linked into. And I believe that, we would have some very fruitful conversations moving forward. So again, leverage LinkedIn to your benefit. Make sure you're posting articles or posts, developing good content. That's essentially what I'm trying to drive at, related to what you're doing. So that people can draw those parallels, but it also puts you out there and puts you on a platform whereby you're not paying for press coverage, so you're getting a quote unquote free of charge because you have no idea who's looking at whose feed your stuff is going to come through, and may be able to help you further your aims and objectives. Virtual meetings, we're having that right now. Sorry, StreamYard isn't one of the ones that was listed, but it certainly is going to be added to this moving forward. This is actually my first StreamYard experience, apart from 2 weeks ago. So virtual meetings, let's leverage those and leverage those to our benefit. Online etiquette and techniques, especially if you're going to, you have the objective of networking. When you log into a virtual meeting, the very first thing that you need to do is introduce yourself in the chat box if there's a chat box present. Hi, This is Achenyo of MitiMeth, calling in from Nigeria. Good afternoon, glad to be here. So at least you've established some courtesy right up front. Make sure you introduce yourself, and then if you have questions, type them in the chat box. If you have contributions, type them in the chat box as well. That way people will remember you. I have seen chats, and I'm sure a number of you can relate to this, whereby you've dropped something in a chat box and then other people have latched onto that and said, oh, I think I can help you, or I'd really like to learn more about what you're doing. Now, if you're not visible in the chat box, nobody is going to know who you are or what you're all about or what you potentially have to offer or what can be offered to you as well. So make sure you're visible in the chat box, especially on these online meetings. What else? Okay, exercise patience and reach out periodically. Of course, now that we're doing a lot of stuff online, you can be rest assured that, a number of us are overloaded with all the things that we need to get through in the digital space. The same thing applies to the people that you're networking with or hoping to establish a relationship with. They are also going through those similar challenges. So if somebody does not respond to you, within 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, just be a little bit patient, but make sure you follow up periodically so that you don't drop off their radar. And then lastly, just focus on shared experiences as you network. And it could be shared experiences from a professional standpoint, or it could be personal. So you need to gauge the tone of your interactions to determine when, getting personal is appropriate. And if it's not appropriate, just stick to the shared experience within the professional setting. And if it is appropriate to share a personal experience, please go ahead and do so. Ultimately, you're looking to make a connection and build a connection. And that typically happens when you're sharing experiences. All right. Okay, so networking in a nutshell. We need to network purposefully and be present. One of the things that I highlight all the time is that, especially when you're networking actually it could go either way, whether you're networking in person, face-to-face, or you're doing it remotely, you just need to be focused on that conversation. There's nothing more than being put off by somebody who is in a conversation but not quite present in that conversation. Their eyes are wandering elsewhere, or they're looking at their phone, or whatever the other distractions are. So just make sure that you're present, making eye contact, you're focused on the conversation, and you're picking things out of the conversation that would be of mutual benefit to both of you. Make lasting impressions with your interactions. When you also interact with folks, peradventure, maybe the person you're speaking with is unable to help you, do not hesitate or shy away from asking if the party will be willing to introduce you to somebody that might be able to help you with what you need. But of course, before you start putting that request forward, you need to make sure that you have established that connection, that both of you have connected and connected well. And from there, you can then, present the request, oh, please connect me with somebody who was within your network that can help me with achieving this particular objective. And it's a fantastic way to grow your network organically as well. You also need to be consistent and honest in your projections. You don't want to tell story A this time around, and then the next time around, your story has has changed. You're not being consistent. Because one of the things that I have come to realize within our ecosystem as social entrepreneurs is that it's quite small. So if your story is not consistent, you can be rest assured that, people will find out, people will know. So you just want to make sure that you're very authentic in your projections and that you're consistent as well. And make it a habit of following up with your connections as well. Not necessarily because you want something from them, but just to touch base, to say, hey, I'm just following up, or I found this information to be of benefit to myself and I thought to share this with you. That's one way to, make your connection feel that, yes, you do have them in mind, and that, you are focused on those shared experiences as well. Bottom line, it's a two-way street. And for you to build collaboration capital, you need to establish those connections and do the hard work to ensure that you maintain those connections as well. All right, let's move on to the next slide, which has to do with cultivating strategic relationships. One thing that I'll highlight here is that social entrepreneurs, more than any other type of entrepreneur, understand the power of people. You understand the power of community. Because again, as a social entrepreneur, it's not about the bottom line, it's about the triple bottom line. And in order for that to happen, you have to understand and know the people for whom you're providing the solution to, and the people that could potentially help you, scale your impact to the beneficiaries of your solution. So we understand that more than ever, and we need to ensure that we are cultivating those strategic relationships by maintaining them as well. We develop solutions for people using collaborative approaches. There is no one, and this goes back to the very first slide that I projected, that it's all about, having and forming strategic partnerships. We can't do this alone. The second slide that I showed had a number of partners that, we have worked with over the years and continue to work with. Without them, we will not be where we are today at MitiMeth, and we're forever grateful for that. And of course, we look for ways to pay it forward as well. So I am not, hoarding my network partners to myself, but to the extent that those network partners could be of benefit to other social entrepreneurs or social innovators, I'm more than happy to share those connections. But of course, I need to make sure that, in sharing those connections, it's for a mutual purpose, mutual benefit as well. All right, so let us ensure that we are leveraging the power of collaboration and collaborative approaches. And the same mindset, the same collaborative mindset is essentially the foundation for cultivating strategic business relationships. We just need to just keep in the back of our minds that, we don't operate in silos. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, how to do it, and this is cultivating strategic business relationships. You just need to make sure that, you keep your goals at the forefront of your mind. Why do I need to cultivate this strategic business relationship? To what purpose? How is it going to help my social venture or my social venture or my social innovation? Have those goals at the forefront of your mind, because that would help, provide focus and ensure that indeed you are pursuing the right things or the right relationships. You build human connections, you build relationships. It's all strategic. Your business relationships, the strategic ones, and even the non-strategic ones, are all about human connections. You have to build relationships. And as all of you know here, relationships take time and they also take effort. work with established organizations to build your credibility. I gave the example of partnering with the University of Ibadan very early on during my journey, and that was because I was not known. So I needed, an organization that would help, with that credibility. So I, partnered with the university. Subsequently, I've participated in business plan competitions, Cartier being, one of the big ones. And I'm a fellow, and I was also, the laureate in 2014. Being associated with Cartier has done amazing things. It has built credibility. It puts MitiMeth on a global platform as well. So, look at, these different opportunities and how they can help to project you forward in a positive light, of course. And also, you have the benefits of association as well. The gentleman that I spoke with earlier on this week that I talked about, very, one of the things he mentioned, he said, "Oh, I see that, you're a Cartier fellow." Because he also happens to have connections in Paris. I believe he also he straddles between Paris and Dubai. So he said, "Oh, so that in itself, that was commendation right there, and that was, a form of credibility. I'm part of, I'm associated with Cartier. That does something for our organization as well. And the same thing applies to any other credible organizations that you might be affiliated with. And build a track record. People would like to see a history. They would like to see your progress over the number of years. So we started 10 years ago, and there's a trail of how far we have come over the past 10 years. So we're not where we were 10 years ago, thankfully, and we expect that we will not be where we are today 10 years from now. So you really need to build a track record. Because those are the kinds of things that will now become a selling point when you form these strategic partnerships. All right. And then one last word is this, that, no great partnership or collaboration is created instantly. So if you're thinking that, this is going to be an overnight thing, forget it. It's not going to happen. So it takes time. Relationships and collaborations take time. They take effort. And once you're willing to put in that time and effort, you can be rest assured that at the end of the day, it will be a win-win for both you and your strategic partner as well. So with that, I think that is the last slide, and I think I'm even coming up on my hour. With that, I believe we can go into questions, or should I say I'm turning it over to Oluwatoyi to take us through the next phase.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Wow, I was just nodding all the time while you were teaching. So many great insights to pull from the masterclass you just took us through. Thank you so much for the time. I really love every part of the masterclass. Every part was very invaluable. But I really love how towards the tail end, the penultimate slide spoke to very four key things that almost summarizes the whole masterclass, and we spoke to having your goal, setting your goal
Yeah.
before setting that goal at the front view of your mind,
Yeah.
and moving on to the importance or the pertinence of human connections. So,
Yeah.
in as much as you have your goal will not achieve itself in a silo. It requires an human connection and
Yeah.
networking. The way it is, just as you highlighted during one of the slides, that networking is a two-way street. It
Yeah.
involves collaboration. It involves two people. yourself and another party. And you just again reemphasized the value of building human connections and building relationships. And you went on to also speak about working towards, building those sustainable relationships, working to also deliver value, working to deliver value and letting them see that, okay, um, your organization and yourself are persons or people, organizations of value. So it's not just running in without any intent to make a sustainable impact
Yes.
to
Yeah.
that organization and all. And lastly, you went on to emphasize the need to build and establish credibility. And that's where you were saying you need to work with established organizations to build
Yeah.
credibility. That was the
Yeah.
third point. And I think the fourth point spoke to building. I know I can recollect, but I know
Yes.
the fourth point spoke
Yeah.
to building, just as we spoke about human connections. The third
Yeah.
point spoke to establishing or working with credible organizations, or
Definitely.
working with organizations to build your credibility. And that's where you spoke about, your how important your you being a Cartier fellow
Yeah.
was impactful to the meeting you had with the guy who connected with you via LinkedIn. And I
Yeah.
know the final point, yes, spoke to building a track
A
record.
track record.
Yes,
Yes.
that's the
Yeah.
fourth point. So it
Yes.
spoke to building a track record. And you can't build a track record if you've not worked with established organizations to build credibility over the years. And you
Yeah.
also highlighted that you've been in existence for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And from what we saw, during the I think third slide, where you shared that photo stamp of all the logos of media organizations, international development organizations within Nigeria and outside Nigeria that you have worked with for free,
Yeah.
and you walked us through that journey. Thank you so much, ma'am. I know at this juncture we will definitely be receiving questions from our
Okay.
participants,
Okay.
but we also have questions already created that I would love
Okay.
to ask you as well. So thank
Okay.
you so much for that very insightful masterclass. And I know that our participants and attendees also have questions that they will want to ask, and they will
Okay.
definitely drop it in the comment section. But ahead of that, let me ask my own question.
All right. Please
So
go
I know
ahead.
that when seeking to collaborate with other stakeholders in the development sector, there are maybe top three or five things we are usually asked to keep in mind before sending a proposal for collaboration. Could you align those top three to five things that we should keep in mind before sending a proposal for collaboration?
Okay. So first and foremost, and I'll tell you, this, I'm not going to be theoretical about this. I'm going to be very
Yes.
practical. In terms of sending proposals, I think the very first place you want to start off with is knowing the organization that you want to send the proposal to. Yeah, people send blind proposals and they somehow get lucky, right? But when you consider, the fact that, organizations receive hundreds of proposals at any given point in time. You want to make sure that you already have established, we talk about human connections here. You already have an established relationship with that particular organization. And if you have an established relationship with the organization, you'll be able to tailor your proposal to the needs of the organization. So I will give you an example of what happened yesterday. So yesterday I had a meeting with one of the development agencies. It's a foreign development agency here. How did that meeting come about? The woman came to our showroom with her husband. So they came to the showroom to look at what we were doing. They wanted to validate that indeed we were actually doing stuff with water hyacinth and it was real. So they came, they touched, they felt, they asked, "Are you sure this is it?" We're like, "Of course this is water hyacinth." So that was a validation for them. During the course of that conversation, it now became apparent. They said, oh, they'll get back to us in 2 weeks, that they have a program coming up. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, or thereabouts, we got an invitation. And it was to an event and a documentary. So the documentary was sent in the email as well. When I clicked on the documentary was about the plight of coastal communities and water hyacinth, how water hyacinth had affected those communities. So there was now a shared connection. We talk about shared connections. So they were like,
Yes.
we've highlighted the plight of these communities. Here is somebody that's doing stuff with the stuff that is affecting these communities negatively and creating economic value from it. So it was a fit. So they were like, we've highlighted the plight, here's a solution, right? And a practical solution that has been validated. We have touched, we have felt, we know it is real. All right? After we finished, so, it now became, we would like you to exhibit your stuff at our press viewing at the museum. So we ended up, taking our stuff there. During the course of the conversation, so it was her husband is a photojournalist. So she now tells me, oh, by the way, I work for this foreign development agency. We would like to hear more about your training. You train people, we know that. We'd like to learn more about it. So I said, okay, that's fine. This week is busy. So, now the conversation, the tone had been set. We've established that mutual shared connection. Beyond her husband's documentary is now this development agency that's interested in training and providing employment, empowering communities so that they can be employable. So you can see how these two now just sort of fit together. We now had a point of many points of shared connection here. Needless to say, we now met yesterday. And this meeting was now with her as a lead of this development agency. In sitting down and having that meeting, I was able to share what we did, and they were able to share what their programs were about. And in fact, they were the ones that were now saying, oh, this is how we see your organization fitting in. This is where I think we have opportunities to work together, to collaborate. So we're talking about building collaboration within the sector. So it was all as a result of establishing this human connection and understanding what the needs of the other party was and what we had to offer and what they could also offer us as well. That conversation was now like, okay, so now that we understand, why don't you put together some slides? And then you put together a concept note. But I'm going to be developing this from an informed standpoint. I know what programs they are funding. I know what the aims and objectives of the program are, and I can see how it ties into what we have to offer. That is how I'm going to build my proposal moving forward. If I sent it blind, I would have just been taking a stab in the dark because I won't have had the benefit of understanding exactly what the needs of the agency were, such that I'll be in a better position to even present my story and my offering to the organization. So that's my example. So I can't say 1, 2, 3, that's how it's going to happen. But what I can tell you is you need to understand what the needs of the organization are. It is best if you have a human connection so that, some of the things that are not written on that, if they have an EOI or whatever, so there's just some information that you will not be able to get if you don't have that human connection. So that's one way of developing a robust proposal. Then secondly, another way of developing a proposal is from expressions of interest. Also earlier on, actually towards the end of last week, I got another email from another organization just telling me that, oh, by the way, we have an EOI. and it is expiring, or rather the deadline is October 11th. Please look at it. They sent the link, and please look into putting a proposal out there. And within the EOI, they had highlighted the things that they were interested in receiving within the proposal. So those are the ways that I typically approach, my own proposal development. It's typically from an informed standpoint. I don't do
Standpoint.
blind proposals because I don't like taking a stab in the dark. And I believe that, if you do it from an informed standpoint, I think your likelihood of success is going to be
Mm.
higher.
Higher.
First and foremost, you can follow up with an individual to say, oh, by the way, that proposal I submitted, I haven't heard anything. What's the status? And so on and so forth. If there's no human connection, you're simply just waiting or sending an email to a general inbox that may or may not be read or
Right.
acknowledged. So it always is good to have a relationship established with either individuals within the organization, with decision makers, so that you can even get feedback. In some instances, your proposal might not even necessarily be accepted, but you'll be able to get feedback as to why it wasn't accepted. So
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, in a nutshell, you have shared that it's very important that we understand. Number one, you capped it by saying it's important that you prepare your proposal from an informed standpoint. And how do you become informed? It comes from a place of really understanding the needs of the organization, also moving forward to building human connections. And then you also highlighted the importance of also focusing on shared experiences or connections. You know, how you connected the situation with the woman, her husband, and the development
yes.
agency. So that was just so brilliantly, put into three highlights or points, and
All
really
right.
just
Well, thank you
help
for
us.
summarizing it.
You most welcome, ma'am. Soma, there's a question here for you. Kolawole Golaon is asking a question, and it goes first. How do you build that initial track record when all you have is just your personal competency, moving from 0 to 1, so to say?
0 to 1. So, very good question. I think, you know, we sometimes make the mistake of thinking that it has to be this, gigantic, monumental results that we have achieved, and not necessarily so. Kolawole, if it, brings you any comfort, I started from ground zero. And what I did was just keep track of the small successes. I mean, you celebrate your small
Mm,
successes. If you don't celebrate your small successes, you won't be able to celebrate the big ones.
big
So
ones.
celebrate those small successes where you've achieved an objective or a goal, or even a small, quote unquote, what you think is a small task or activity. Celebrate that. Because it's in celebrating that you'll now begin to build on those successes. So your zero would move to 0.1 and then 0.2. So all these incremental steps or incremental fractions would eventually add up to that one. But you need to make sure that you're keeping track of those the incremental successes along the way. Do not think that any of them is inconsequential, because it's a
Mm,
cumulative journey, and it's cumulative successes that make up your big success at the end of the
success.
day.
Mm, I love it. I love it. I love how you laid emphasis on the need to celebrate the little successes, and it's the accumulation of these bit-sized successes that now become gigantic success stories
Exactly.
that you share, or that is highly celebrated, or becomes a
Okay.
viral, celebration and all. Thank you so much for emphasizing that, Matt. All right. So I know I want to ask this question, and this moves me to the next line of thought. Are there divergent sectors that collaboration cannot be facilitated in a social enterprise?
Okay, so can you give an example of that? What did you, when you talk about divergence? So,
Okay,
Help me
so
flesh that
example
out.
is, of course, as a social enterprise, you can collaborate with the public sector or the private sector, but there may be some maybe sensitive sectors that may not want to facilitate a collaboration with a social enterprise. So,
Okay.
based on your experience, have you ever encountered such, in your years of networking and collaboration?
Not necessarily. So again, this now boils down to, where are you networking and with whom are you networking, right?
Networking.
So you
Yeah.
want to make sure that, your networks are with networks of, should I say, like-minded. They're not necessarily all, I mean, they're different stakeholders within this space. So we're not necessarily
Yes.
all doing the same thing or alike. But you need to have, I mean, the sectors that you're going to be networking with, or the people within those sectors, or the organizations within those sectors, uh, have to be somewhat like-minded in the sense that they buy into what you're doing. So they have to also be socially conscious or socially minded. And one of the ways you can tap into the social mindedness of an organization, to start with, is, do they do things within the community? Do they have any community programs? Especially if what you're looking at is going to be targeting communities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same communities or type of communities you're interested in, but are they community minded? Is there even an interest in developing communities or providing solutions within this particular space? If there's no evidence of that, it could either be an opportunity for you to educate and persuade and influence, because we talked about the competencies of a networker being that of influence and persuasion.
Yeah.
So, that could be an opportunity. It might be that they just are completely oblivious
Mm.
to, some of the things that are happening within space, and some of the things that they could, potentially be a part of. So it could be an educative process as well. So I won't necessarily completely write off any one organization unless the ethos of that organization is
Organization. Right.
completely, at polar
Misaligned.
opposites of
Yeah.
yours. Then I'll say that probably is a no-go zone, because if you're not agreed, there's no way you can possibly
Yes.
work together as well as walk together.
Yes.
And that's extremely important, because you want to make sure that your strategic partners there's an alignment. If there's no alignment, you're just going to be completely out of joint. And you'll find that instead of moving forward, you're going to be regressing as a result of cultivating a very bad relationship.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, ma'am. And I love how in between that, we're emphasizing the need for value alignment. I think that's one of the things that could possibly, stifle a collaboration or networking opportunity. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, this next question goes thus: how do you leverage the power of networking without appearing opportunistic in a negative sense?
You have to be a quote unquote opportunistic, but in a
Yeah,
positive sense.
yeah,
You have to be opportunistic in a positive sense. And it really depends
yes,
on courage and how you present yourself. You're leveraging your network. Again, it's about give and take. So
yes,
there's a bit of being opportunistic, but you're being opportunistic in a giving way, so to
yes,
speak, because it's all about you. It's about the other person as well. Now, where you now become exploitative, that's a problem. And
yes.
quite frankly, I don't think that, if you're a social entrepreneur and you're exploitative in nature, there's even a problem with that.
Problem with
Because you can't be socially minded and then be
yeah,
looking at how you can exploit different situations or exploit people or organizations
yes,
completely. Those are opposite polars. So you'll be opportunistic. I mean, you're opportunity seeking,
yes.
but in a in a positive way,
Positive
give
way.
and take. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this very, very great time spent with you. Thank you for the very enriching presentation. We've really learned a lot tonight. There's just so much wisdom to glean from you, and we really do appreciate this opportunity.
You're
So please, we
welcome.
would love you to share your final words with us. you know.
Ah. All right. So since this is about, networking and, building sector to sector collaborations, I just be your true authentic self, right? I believe, social innovators, social entrepreneurs, we're a special breed, even though if I say that myself, right? Um, just be authentic in your relationships, be very authentic in your interactions, and don't go in with this. Yes, you have your objectives and your goals in mind, but do not close doors because you
Mm,
feel as if your objective or your goals
does
have
not
not been met with this particular person. You have
mm,
no idea
idea.
where that interaction could take you. Yes, it might not help you achieve this particular objective, but peradventure, there are other
Mm,
things down the line that this relationship or this network
yeah,
connection might help you
yeah.
to achieve in the future. So don't close doors unless it's an issue of our value systems are not aligned or there's
Mhm.
something unethical about this particular person I'm engaged with or trying to engage with. And just be yourself and enjoy the process of networking. It's an ongoing strategy. It's not a
Yes.
one-time thing.
One
So just
time
keep that in
thing.
the back of your mind. And it's all part of building capital. We call it
Mm-hmm.
collaborative or collaboration capital. I just heard that term last week. And that's
Hmm.
the truth. You are building capital, you're building
Capital.
equity as well.
Yes. Yes.
That is going to be of benefit somewhere down the line, if not for your organization, perhaps for another organization as well.
Wow. Thank you so much, ma'am. I just love the last few words that networking is an opportunity to build capital. When you see that, you really would look at it as an opportunity to really grow, not capital in the financial
Yes,
sense, but
yes,
human
yes.
capital.
Yeah, that's well.
And just as you highlighted during the presentation, that within the social sector, development sector, we really harness the power of people,
Yeah,
and it's so important to our work. So it's
yeah,
very pertinent that we have at the back of our mind that what we're doing is really growing our human capital. Thank you
absolutely.
so much, ma'am. We
You're
really do
very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
the germs of wisdom, and really I'm sure everyone who has joined it tonight would definitely have an action plan to spool out, from this session. I would really encourage everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you stay in touch. And also, I'm sure you're part of our email community. Or if you're not, you can also, subscribe to being part of our email community and other communities that we're on. Thank you so
All
much
right.
to
Thank
everyone
you.
out there, every
Yes.
change maker, every social innovator, every impact maker doing a great work out there who have joined us tonight. We really do appreciate you, and we look forward to having all of you with us at another edition of the IHA Social Impact Webinar. We have so much in store, so much ahead of us. We have the Diploma Dialogue 2021 upon us, which we would host in November, and I would say that you'll receive more information about the DD 2021 coming up in few weeks. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again.
All
I
right.
really
And thank
appreciate
you.
the time
Thank you
spent.
to Ideation Hub Africa as well.
Thank
Well
you,
done and keep up
ma'am.
the great work. Thank
And
you.
we also look forward to that opportunity of strengthening our relationship with you. So I would definitely be in your corner to, ask more questions because
No
you
problem.
you have that wealth of experience as well. Thank you so much, Ma.
You're
And to
welcome.
everyone who have joined us this evening, again, I would lay emphasis on the final words shared by our guest mentor, where she said that just be your true, authentic self. And I can see that, my people have also highlighted that. Be your true, authentic self in your relationship and interaction with people. Don't go in as much as you have a goal, don't go in with an intent to exploit or to manipulate. Go in there to be yourself, and definitely don't lock or shut doors just because the goal in mind wasn't accomplished. You really can't say what could be bettered in the long term. All
Absolutely.
right. So to everyone, we say enjoy a blissful night. All
All right.
right.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.